Hello, my name is Roisin and welcome back to my channel. So in today's reading vlog, I will be reading some of the YouTuber favourite books from 2021. Yay! As you can already tell from the title. So how I went about collating what were the best books of the YouTubers' favourite books. There will be a playlist linked in the description, and I will also put it in the cards so you can click wherever you prefer if you want to go and check my references. There are 36 videos on that playlist of booktubers that I watch, and so those were the long list, I suppose. This will be the best books kind of mostly literary fiction booktube, I suppose. I don't watch everybody. I'm sure there are lots of people who read a lot of literary fiction who aren't on my list, and there are people on my list who read other things as well, so it's not entirely cohesive, but it's just the ones that I had. So what I did was I made a spreadsheet, because of course I did, love a spreadsheet, and I wrote down literally every single book that everybody talked about in those 36 videos. Some people did 10, some people did 20, there were a lot in here. If something was mentioned more than once, I made a note of that too, and ended up with one book that 5 people had recommended, one book that 4 people had recommended, and then 6 books that 3 people recommended, and then everything else was less than that. Most books only one person recommended. So what I decided to do was, since we had one with 5 and one with 4, I would read both of those books, the most popular books from Literary Fiction Booktube 2021. And those books are Transcendent Kingdom by Gyassi. This was the most popular book out of everyone that I watch. It was recommended by Jen Campbell, More Rebecca, Lena Norms, Asiata Amadou, and Doz. They all said that this was their favourite book of the year, or one of their favourite books of the year. And then the second one that came up 4 times was Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. And this was in the favourite books of Claire Fenby, A Sunny Book Nook, EKG, and The Bar and the Bookcase. So that was easy enough to choose those 2. So, like I said, there were also 6 books that 3 people had recommended. So the way I decided to narrow this down was I highlighted everybody who had one book in their favourites that was also on my favourites of 2021. And 2 of the books that 3 people had said were their favourites, 2 people who had a book that matched mine also said it was their favourite. Does that make sense? Should be that their taste is at least somewhat similar to mine, since we both loved similar books. Disability Visibility, which is an essay collection edited by Wong, and the people who said they loved that were Jen Campbell, Hannah May, and The Bar and the Bookcase. And Hannah May and The Bar and the Bookcase both had a book on their favourites that was on my favourites, which actually for both of them was Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe, which is great because that is non-fiction and Disability Visibility is non-fiction. And then the second one that had 2 people who matched up with me was Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller. And this one was on the favourites of Lena Norms, Lauren in the Books, and Eric Carl Anderson. And Lena Norms and I both put Still Life on our best books of 2021, and Eric Carl Anderson and I both put Cathedral by Ben Hopkins on our best books of 2021. I will be reading those 4 books over the course of this week. Very, very popular books, so I'm very excited that hopefully I will find some new favourites for 2022 already this year. So yesterday I went to a snowdrop garden, and this was going to be in a different vlog, but yesterday I decided to just stop reading all of the books for that vlog because it was not working for me. But I don't want to waste all of that snowdrop footage, especially since my boyfriend did help me out with it, and he was excited for it to be in the vlog. So I will insert that into this vlog here. So I'm going to start with Transcendent Kingdom. So let's see what everyone had to say about why this was one of their favourite books of last year.
Also a book that I loved and also broke my heart and made me cry a lot is Transcendent Kingdom by Gyassi.
Transcendent Kingdom is a deeply moving portrait of a family of Ghanaian immigrants ravaged by depression and addiction and grief.
A will they, won't they romance between a woman and her religion.
It follows Gifty, who is studying for a PhD in neuroscience at Stanford, and her research deals with depression and addiction, two things that she is well aware of.
Substance abuse, education, religion, generational trauma, immigrants, so many different topics.
It stomped on my heart. It didn't just tread on it, it stomped on it.
I wanted to give a book to a person to basically widen and broaden their mind about the issues that we have in our society. I would be here.
I felt the emotions of this book almost snuck up on me the way they did on Gifty. It felt like her and I were both on the same journey.
It's just so well written and so God, that book.
This book touched me to say the least. It immediately was my number one. When I read this book, I knew that this was going to be my number one favorite book.
Hello. So last night I went out for dinner with my partner because it was his birthday fairly recently, and because of work we weren't able to go until yesterday. So I'm going to insert that. So I'm halfway through Transcendent Kingdom by Gyassi, and I can see why this book would have broad appeal, but it doesn't feel like the writing style is tailored for me, which is not what a book is supposed to be, but it does mean that I'm not loving the style of the writing. But the writing is very simple, very stripped. Kind of reminds me most of Brit Bennett's style of writing. I think if you like one, you would like the other. There are a few metaphors that feel a little strained for me, a little cheesy in parts. I would say some of the writing of this feels a bit cheesy for me. Not a lot of it, but there are a few occasions where I'm like, oh, you over-explained it. I've talked about this before on my channel, how I hate an over-explained metaphor. Leave the metaphor there and let me tell what you were trying to say from the metaphor. And it weaves in and out of being the story and then being Gifty telling us her feelings about things like growing up black in the American South and as a black female scientist and wanting to be just a scientist, and also of religion, and with being someone who grew up in a family with mental health issues and addiction. And sometimes it reads more like a memoir or an essay rather than a novel. The story feels like it's structured around this essay and these ideas that are being discussed, kind of in a way that reminds me of Detransition Baby, although a lot less plotty than Detransition Baby, I would say. So sometimes it feels like it's not giving those things enough in depth, and I don't know if that's just because I'm only halfway through, but they feel a bit surface level and like they're not being dived into that much. It feels a bit sometimes like a TED talk rather than like a novel. So everything feels a bit distinct and not well integrated. I don't think it's bad. I do think that it is nothing's too jarring about the slips in between the story and the ideas, and she's definitely done a good job of building up characters that feel real, and I can really see the academic setting, the Alabama setting, all of that. It feels very lived in because it feels like she's telling me a true story. So that's why it feels like a memoir. It feels very honest and very true. I just feel like it's not got the beauty of writing that I prefer, and it feels too on the nose and too surface level at the moment for my personal preference. Hello, so I have read more, but I'm not going to update you about my reading. It is also Storm Eunice, I think is what they've called this one. So we're supposed to be having gale force winds and rain. Currently it's not raining and it's not that windy. So my boyfriend did have to go into work because the trains were still running when he left at 5:30 this morning, but I don't know how he's gonna get home. That's the main thing I'm worried about. But because it is horrible weather and because we've been warned not to go anywhere unnecessary, make any unnecessary journeys, I am going to be inside all day. So we're going to do our best to try and read as much as possible today. 9 in the morning. Oh, bollocks. I was supposed to call the DWP. I've got to do that as well. So I'll start calling the DWP now. I feel like I'm going to be talking about the weather a lot today. Hello. Storm's calmed down, so that's good. Boyfriend is on his way back. Train was delayed for an hour and a half, I think. But seems to be moving now. So train in front of them got stuck because it had a plastic bag wrapped around its wheel. Anyway, I finished Transcendent Kingdom by Gyassi, and I thought it was good, but not great. Like, accomplished is a word that I've used a lot to talk about writing like this. By which I mean that it is very smooth, it flows well, the plot and the ideas are well integrated, there is nothing jarring or standing out about the writing in a good way. I mean that in a good way. It works well as a piece of writing, and I can see it's easy to read because nothing stands out as jarring. It's not beautiful, it's not lyrical, it's not doing anything special in terms of the style of the writing, but it is also doing what it is doing, the plain, simple, straightforward writing, well. I was frustrated, however, with the discussions that happened in this book. Discussions about addiction and about being the sister of someone who's dealing with addiction and the child of someone with serious mental health issues. The discussions about religion and science, and losing your religion. The discussions about race in America. All of those things, I was frustrated with them because I felt like we were getting headlines and not any detail. It felt very surface level, like this is the thesis statement, but there was no exploration or depth to what was being discussed. It all felt very surface level. Like, particularly when she was talking about being the sister of someone with an addiction, it felt like she would say almost the bad things or the like really the damning things that you can think, and then she'd have to qualify them and justify them. And so it felt like it was not willing to go as far as I wish it had been, especially with the religion and the science stuff. I was like, yes, you are barely touching the surface of this discussion, and I wish there had been more depth and more thought and more complexity brought to this. It felt very simplistic in terms of that discussion. It didn't feel like there was much vulnerability brought to it from our character's point of view. It was that there was so much it could have done that it didn't feel like it was doing, and maybe I'm just damning it because I'm wanting it to be something that it's not. But so overall, I would say it was good. It wasn't for me, and I was missing some aspects of it. It wasn't a bad book by any means, and I can see why it's very popular. I don't know, that's just where I've landed for Transcendent Kingdom, which does make me think probably not going to read Homegoing, because I've been meaning to read Homegoing for a while. But in terms of historical fiction, I often dislike books that move quickly through time periods because I want the setting to feel real, and that's what Homegoing does. We never go, and then I also know that her writing, whilst good, is not my style. I would say that Gifty felt very real to me, felt like 100% fully realised person, which I think was good. It made me think, like, wonder about Gyasi's personal experience and how much that related to this. And I think that she did, an excellent job of creating a person and a fully rounded, fleshed out thought process. But I just wish those thoughts had been a bit deeper. So I'm also going to begin Unsettled Ground. So let's have some YouTubers try and sell us this book.
Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller.
Story of twins, adult twins, who are brother and sister.
Who are essentially experiencing poverty, who are in their 50s, who live with their elderly mother who dies.
And they've lived a relatively sheltered existence out in the countryside.
Outside of this system of registry and cards and money, grief and longing and how cruel the world can be, but also like how on a very basic level beautiful it is. And
overall, it's quite like a melancholy book, but there are moments of great joy and connectedness.
And Claire Fuller is incredible at representing that and showing it in a really empathetic way.
Such a moving, poignant novel that really surprised me.
And I was just bowled over by that book.
I have begun Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller, and I'm only about 50 or so pages into this so far. So this is about Jeannie and Julius, whose mother has died. In the first chapter she dies, and they are 51 years old, they're twins, and they live in poverty, in rural poverty in England, and after their mother dies things sort of start to fall apart for them. And so far we have been seeing from both their perspectives how they deal with work, with people, kind of the way that people view them and look on them, and their difficulty navigating the system that is not set up for people like them. It's set up to kind of exclude people like them. So far, what I would say is that the writing of this is beautiful. Like, I really, really like the writing of this. It's very clean and simple, but still has a lot of beauty, rhythm and lyricism to it. It kind of reminds me of like nature writing, but it's obviously much more character focused and much more about people than nature writing usually is. But it has that kind of, there's a melancholy air, but there's a lightness to it, and I don't know if it's because it's a rural setting that's making me think of that nature writing, but there's just something sort of wistful about it, even though it's much more sad than wistful, generally speaking. I've only just begun, there's still a lot more for me to read, but yeah, so far I really, really love the writing of this one, which is great. I am now going to get an MRI for my pelvis. My hospital called and they pushed it back by an hour, so that's why I'm still at home. But I have to go get a train into South London to get an MRI, which seems like a long way to go, but it's because I used to live in South London, so my rheumatology team is there, and I really should get transferred to the Hertfordshire hospitals, to one of the Hertfordshire hospitals, rather than having to travel an hour and a half every time I need a test. But it is essential. I am halfway through Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller now, and I'm enjoying it. I like it. I think it is well written. I think some of the beauty has faded as we've got more into plot, but that's just a balance I guess you have to strike somewhere. There's not a lot that goes on. There's not a lot of, like, everything being discussed is being discussed quite subtly, so it's talking a lot about class and the structures of our society and how they are set up to not help people who struggle with literacy or who don't have access to the internet, and how it becomes impossible to move, and also the sort of protections that their mother set up for them, that they are suddenly realizing when she's not there are no longer protections but are hindrances in her life, in their lives. There are some things I'm wondering about in terms of the past. There are two kind of mystery ideas that I have an idea of what's going on, but I don't know if it's right. But yeah, I still think it's really well written, and I'm enjoying it, but I feel like there's not that much for me to like dive into yet. Hello, it is the evening, as you can possibly see. There we go, that's a bit better. So I have finished Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller, and again, I feel a little like I'm being really super critical, and I don't know if it's the mind frame that I'm in at the moment, that like I'm finding myself focusing on things that feel critical rather than enjoying the reading experience, which is something that I think I tend to do. Like, it's not like a new thing. But yeah, I don't love this book. I like it and I can appreciate it, but I haven't fallen in love with it or really super enjoyed the reading experience. I think in the beginning I was enjoying the beautiful writing, and then this book gets into some more plot focused stuff, and when the plot picks up, the writing doesn't keep that beauty with like carefully chosen words. It becomes much more for the driving of the plot. I think it's probably quite a difficult balancing act to strike. The beautiful writing does come back again at the end, but it made that section where it was a bit more plotty and eventful feel a bit disjointed, and I don't know if that's in the places where they feel safe and home. There is time for that beauty in terms of the writing and the nature and the focus on the slowness of their life, and then when things pick up and become chaotic and disjointed and full of a lot more tension, stress and fear, then we lose the beauty. I don't know, maybe that's what's happening. Yeah, it just felt a little disconnected and less enjoyable for me. I did find myself really wanting to find out what happened and really like tense and feeling for the characters, so that means the writing was working in that sense. I did feel like I was reading quite fast to find out what was going to happen, so the plot did interest me enough in those ways, and the characters I certainly felt for. Jeannie more than Julius. Julius felt a little more shallow in terms of the characterization, but I did enjoy the smaller characters on the outside, although there was another one that I felt like motivation wise was not really fully explored, and there was kind of an explanation for that. I'm trying not to give anything away in the end, which I did feel was satisfactory plot wise, but it still makes that character kind of a cartoon evil villain. I really enjoyed but I really appreciated the talk about poverty and the like detail gone into of their experiences of poverty, like the physical aspects of that and the like logistical aspects of poverty and the way that our society is not set up for people who don't have access. I think I mentioned this earlier, and I thought that the like real detail of how she gets around, or how they both get around and do things despite their poverty, I thought that was well done and really important. There were a few mysteries that were sprinkled throughout that were kind of not mysterious, and I don't know if they were meant to be, but they were like, oh, we haven't had the reveal yet, and there's a reveal, but you know, or at least I knew the whole way through these two things that were going to be revealed. I was like, yeah, that's fairly straightforward and obvious. So I don't know if the foreshadowing was too heavy, or if you are supposed to know and it's just that Jeannie, because of her lack of access to a lot of information and things and her like enclosed life, she doesn't know, and maybe that's the reasoning for it. I don't know, but I did feel like the reveal parts of it became a little soapy and melodramatic, unnecessarily so, kind of didn't fit well with the tone of the book. So yeah, those are my critiques. I still thought it was a good book, but I haven't fallen in love with either of these books so far. I was about to listen to Disability Visibility because I'd got the audiobook out from my library, and then realised once I started listening to it that I had a version adapted for young adults, which is not the version I think that the people who recommended it have read, and it was not the version that I wanted to be reading. So I got a Kobo audiobook trial. Hello, yes, the weather is still crap. I am going out to the supermarket in a minute, but I thought I should talk to you about the books that I'm reading now. So I have started Disability Visibility, edited by Alice Wong. So let's let Hannah May, Jen Campbell and Jalen from The Bar in the Bookcase tell us about that book.
This is Disability Visibility, edited by Alice Wong.
Collection of personal essays from various disabled writers.
So many of my new favourite writers.
Loads of different perspectives, and there is so much intersectionality going on in this book, which
I think this book is so rewarding because this is a great way to learn more about disability from a variety of voices.
The book cemented so many of my feelings and really helped me understand my disabled identity, as well as the identity of so many other disabled people, and realise that other people share those thoughts that I have. And I think books that make you feel less alone.
And it really puts a fire under readers to question access.
My two favourite essays in this collection were essays by Harriet McBride Johnson, which was focused on eugenics, and also Ariel Henley's There's a Mathematical Equation That Proves That I'm Ugly. It's talking about facial disfigurement. And
my favourite being Jameson Hill's essay on love means you don't have to say anything, about living with severe ME. And just like, if I recommend one book to you if you haven't read it, it's this book.
So I started reading this book and I was immediately made aware of the fact that I thought this was going to be a much more academic book. I don't know where I'd got that idea from, but I certainly had an idea that this was going to be very academic, and it's not at all. It's very much personal essays. Now, I do have like not the best experience reading anthologies of personal essays, because there are always some that work better for you than others, and I think particularly, I don't know, maybe I have to get over the idea of writing style when it comes to something like this, not because there is no style in any of them, there are, but because some of them are, I guess the content is more important than the way that they're saying things or the way they're telling you things. That is something that I kind of needed to be aware of, because some of these I haven't enjoyed as much, even though the content is interesting and important. It's just the writing style is very plain or very not my style. I would say that this is perhaps a book that I've had the most thoughts about whilst reading compared to the others. I don't know if that's because it's non-fiction, so there is more to think about. I do also feel like a lot of it is just like my personal reaction to talking about disability. I've mentioned on the channel before, I am disabled. I have psoriatic arthritis, as well as numerous other things personally relating to this, and I haven't read a lot of books about disability over the time. I started trying to read the Barbellion Prize this month. I gave up on it for numerous reasons, which I will go into on my wrap up of the month, I suppose. But I suppose I read more like articles or listen to podcasts about this sort of thing. This is my first like really foray into a book about it. I do wish that a lot of the essays were longer. I feel like so far some of them are very much touching on the surface of ideas and not able to delve into them because they are like restricted by length. There were ones that I found very interesting, like the one about being deaf in prison. I like the way that they are dealing with lots of different aspects and intersections of identity with the essays chosen. There was one about cyborgs, about being a cyborg, and I did get like a thrill reading that one because she mentions biologics, which are the class of drug that I am on, and how people, like she was talking about what people are considered cyborgs and are allowed to sell things as a cyborg, and how some people, like being in a wheelchair is not often considered to be cyborg, even though you are using tech to get around, to live your life. Biologics, which are the class of drug that I take, they are an immunosuppressant that uses genetically engineered cells to work, and I guess that's why she was saying like could potentially be considered cyborg. I don't know, my cells themselves have not been genetically engineered. I'm just injecting myself with genetic engineering twice a month. But I did get a thrill because I think that's the first time I've ever read anything that mentions them, and so that like recognition, it wasn't a huge like, oh, this is amazing for me. It was more like when I read like Queenie or Open Water and they mentioned Crystal Palace, Gypsy Hill, the areas where I grew up, and there's that spark of recognition. There was also the one about searching for a cure, and that one I had a lot of reactions to as well. I'm pretty sure is one that Hannah talked about on her channel as well, because like there's always the social model of disability and how it's the world that disables us rather than us ourselves, and how I don't really relate to that idea. And I don't know if it's because I became disabled rather than being born that way, but also like chronic pain and chronic fatigue. I don't think the world is making that hard. I think that that is just hard, and something that I would like to get rid of if I possibly could. Anyway, so yes, I'm having lots and lots of thoughts and reactions to it. The way that I'm reacting to it is very personal rather than being very academic or just interested in the topic. Like the one about native health in America and the one about prison, obviously they interested me as an outsider and someone who doesn't have that perspective. I do think the one about cyborg was one of the most interestingly written as well, but yeah, that's just where I'm thinking about it so far. I don't know, I think for me personally at this stage it would be very hard for me to class an anthology of lots of different writers as one of my favourites, because they don't all stand up. Like some of them really do and some of them don't, and I haven't mentioned those because I've already forgotten them. Hello. I have a horrendous migraine, so I'm not like fully here, but I have finished Disability Visibility, and bit ironic that my disability is making it hard for me to talk to you about this book about disability, but I'm gonna do my best. So I think that is an important book, and there are a lot of ways that it talks about disability that I haven't read before, and this is possibly the most hyped book about this topic. However, I mean, two of the people who I'm talking about here who recommended this book specifically are disabled. I don't know about Jalen from the Bar in the Bookcase. I don't know if he is disabled or not, so I don't want to say for certain, but I know Hannah and Jen are both disabled. It's good that it's being recommended by disabled people, but also like, is it mostly disabled people who are reading about it? The enjoyment of and how well a book is done is separate for me from the importance of the book, and so I would say that this book is also done well, and I like the variety. As I was saying earlier, some of the essays don't always line up for me. The essay about bipolar disorder, for example, I felt like the style of writing was just a bit cheesy, all the references to Buffy and everything, it just felt a bit cheesy, which is nothing against the content, but just my preference in terms of the style of writing. It didn't quite live up to it for me, and there was a lot of things about it that, yeah, there were several of them that I just sort of were just okay. There were some that I thought the message was really great, but the writing style or whatever didn't live up to it. The one about transportation in New York I thought was really interesting and well done, and sexual violence. One of them by someone, the second to last one, really got on my nerves. So like, that's the thing that I have with anthologies, is that it's not always easy to line up. I will say this is the one that I have had the most thoughts about and the most to relate to or to think and react to. Again, as I was saying earlier, is that because it's non-fiction? Is it because I'm disabled? Like, various different reasons that could be behind that, and I think it's difficult to compare it to the novels in that sense. I'm glad I read it, but I don't think anthologies of personal essays are for me very much. I think that I would look up the writers that I have enjoyed and read a longer form piece of work, but I think that for me, I do have a preference towards the longer form, to things that can go a bit more in depth and can explore more complexities. There wasn't space for as much exploration of complexities, and that's what happens when so many different identities are squished into one place. I did feel like seen and identifying with, like I mentioned with the cyborg essay, for example, and searching for a cure essay. There were things that resonated with me, but I just think that I prefer something that moves at a slower pace and explores things more in depth rather than lots together. I think it's a great jumping off point, but for me, my preference is always deeper. Hello, so I am going to start Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney, one of the most hyped books of last year. So let's see what the other booktubers who love this book had to say about it.
We have Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney.
Follows Alice and Eileen. Alice, who is a successful author, and Eileen, who works in publishing.
Young Irish people that are falling in and out of love.
Relationships, the internet, culture, politics, media.
Trying to understand your own identity and take meaning from your life and from the world where everything is going to shit.
All the books that I read this year might have been the most fun and just like heartwarming experience of reading that I've had.
One of Sally Rooney's more hopeful reads. I felt very happy and hopeful towards the end of the book.
Many of the conversations within this book remind me of conversations that I have with my friends, and it also reminds me of the complicated nature of relationships, romantic and friendship.
Rooney is just a brilliant writer who at once can have these massive, big conversations as well as doing tiny, intimate portraits.
What it means to write a novel when the end of the world is looming, and by the end of this book, I damn near cried.
So I'm about 20% of the way through Beautiful World, Where Are You? So far, I do like Sally Rooney's writing. I've read Normal People before, gave it 5 stars last year, so I do like her way of writing. It feels really easy, but at the same time, very evocative. It does bring me into a sense of place. This one is interesting because I do think Sally Rooney, her Normal People and this have both got ideas that they're discussing, and people thinking through ideas and concepts is a big part of both of them, but more so I would say in this. I feel like this is pushed further into that sort of cerebral area. So far, I mean, there is some plot, but so far there is less plot, and a lot of it is about discussion and ideas, which is similar to Transcendent Kingdom. Like I said, they both feel like books where there are ideas and thoughts wanting to be discussed, and those are wrapped loosely around a story, rather than a story where those things come organically. But I would say it feels, to me, different in here and more to my style, to my preference, and I think that's because this is a discussion. It is people venting their ideas, but then it is also other people bringing ideas back and like a bouncing off of ideas. And I don't listen to podcasts where there's only one person talking. I always want more than one person as a conversation and a discussion. And so I think maybe that's just a personal preference thing. I'd rather listen to 2 people talk about something than watch a TED talk about something. And I feel like that's the difference that I'm feeling between Sally Rooney and Transcendent Kingdom. What I would say though is that Transcendent Kingdom felt less info dumpy. Like there are parts in this where I'm like, like, oh, so you've had an idea, had some research, and you've just put all your research in here. Just in the first 20%, there was this thing about, oh god, I studied this at uni and I cannot remember. Anyway, and it just felt like she was just dumping all this information that didn't feel very organic to the story. But yeah, so far I like the writing. I do wonder, like I was talking about with disability visibility, the people in this novel are my age. They are about to turn 30, or two of them are, the two women are about to turn 30, so they are my age, and they are, you know, white, liberal or leftist, kind of lower middle class people who grew up in a similar culture to me. Like my parents are Irish, so Irish culture is part of something I grew up with, although I didn't grow up in Ireland, obviously, so there is a difference between those things. But it is, you know, so very similar to me in lots of ways, and maybe it's my ability to relate to that. Like, again, I'm just comparing it to Transcendent Kingdom because these are the two that feel the most similar to me so far, dealing with different topics, but in terms of the style of writing and the using a novel as an idea platform, I'm less related to Gifty, although I do have experience of being someone in close relation to people with addiction, so I do that is something, but religion is so far from my conception, so far from my like way of looking at the world. I do feel like this is going a bit deeper already into some of these ideas. It is like discussing them and pushing them further, and feels less surface level. But yeah, I've only just begun, so we've still got a long way to go, and things might change, thoughts and opinions might change. I'm about 2/3 of the way through Beautiful World, Where Are You right now, and I have to say I prefer Normal People so far. I feel like the miscommunication that's happening in here is annoying me slightly more than it did in Normal People, because in Normal People I feel like when I'm reading this, Sally Rooney is doing something with distance where she's keeping us back from these characters and we see them, and she gives us an idea. Like there was this guy who was holding his phone and she was like, it wasn't clear from the way he was holding his phone whether he wanted to do this or this, and so she's giving us an idea of what's possibly going through their mind, but we're not really inside them, and so she's playing with distance in that way, with, like I said earlier, playing with fictionalization, and very interesting. But it does mean that the miscommunication doesn't feel as like, with Normal People I could understand them and see them better, and here it's just a bit like, come on, you're older for one thing, and also I can't see what they're grappling with. My camera's just died, so we're moving on to my phone, so apologies for the change in quality. But yeah, so that is kind of, this feels much more disconnected and disjointed, and I don't know if that's something that Rooney's playing with, because one of the things that I've heard people talk about is Alice. The Alice character in here is a successful novelist who is young and Irish, and is dealing with prizes and not liking publicity, and how that like is something that is known about Sally Rooney. And so I feel like she's playing with that. Is this character a stand-in for her? Is the things that she's saying about not wanting publicity and not wanting her work to stand on its own, rather than the character of the author, that doesn't matter, and the character of the author that she plays, like feeling like in interviews it's not her. And so it's like, is this allowing us in with this character who is representing her, or is she drawing attention to the fictitiousness of this? And it only works if you know anything about Sally Rooney, but then also possibly, well, it works on a different level, I guess, if you know anything about Sally Rooney. I don't know that much, but from what I gather. Yeah, there's also so many sex scenes in here that I was beginning to feel like a prude. Not that I have anything against them, but at one point it was like, email sex scene, email sex scene, email sex scene. And I was like, for Christ's sake, can we... I know that like sex and its relation to power and gender is something that Sally Rooney explored in Normal People, and I think is exploring here as well. The physical side of relationships and how it sometimes people use it instead of communication. So there are lots of things going on in this novel. It's still like well written and very clever, but yeah, I think, I don't know, we'll see whether she sticks the landing. But yeah, I'm intrigued. I am enjoying it. I don't know why everyone says that they hate Felix. That's the thing that I've heard. Just seems kind of okay, but not that interesting. I think that's the other thing, is that the men in this book are not that interesting. Maybe they will become more interesting, but so far I'm just not that interested in them at all. So I have now finished Beautiful World, Where Are You? I am filming this on my phone because I don't know where I put my camera and I've got to go to work. So this might be a bit of a rushed wrap up, but this was my favourite. Out of the 4 books that I read, this was my favourite. I don't think it's because these characters are more like me or anything. I don't think that's the reason that I like this one the best, but I still didn't love this book either. Really enjoyed the writing of this. The writing style of this book is the most to my taste, and I enjoyed the sort of meandering looks at ideas. I think the second half was a little stronger than the first half, because while I enjoyed the letters, the parts with the couples separate from one another, I felt like were a bit awkward. When they finally got together, there was more warmth and more kind of, we were very distanced from them. I don't know if that's the reason, if that was on purpose, intentional, that we feel distanced in the beginning, and then when they are together, things come to the surface and we kind of get to know their internal processing more. So I enjoyed the second half better. There were some things that like I didn't get on with. Like, I've never met a man who talks as much during sex as Felix in this book. Like, you're having an emotional breakdown whilst you're inside her. Afterwards, sure, but during, bit odd. Yeah, just generally speaking, I like I said, I didn't really care about the male characters for like 3/4 of this book, and they kind of redeem themselves, like in terms of just being interested in them, not in terms of them being good characters, but in terms of them being characters towards the second half. So yeah, there were lots of things to enjoy about this. I found it a very smooth and easy reading experience, the same as with Normal People. I find Sally Rooney's books like manage to be beautiful and compulsively readable at the same time, which I appreciate. There was a lot of beauty when talking about the seaside and all that sort of thing. I really enjoyed the style of writing from that part, but I did find it just a little less cohesive than Normal People. It's doing more, and I'm not sure it's quite succeeding with everything that it's doing. It's trying harder, and I think that some of those things don't quite work for me, but I did enjoy it. I did think it was well done, and I don't know, I don't really like books about writers or read books, generally speaking. I found it a bit wanky, but like aware of itself being wanky at the same time, which doesn't necessarily excuse you being wanky just because you're self-aware, because I find that like level of self-awareness also becomes wanky. Stop saying the word wanky. So those are the 4. So I've read 4 books that Booktubers loved, and all of them were good books, so I can see why they made it to everybody's favourites. I don't think any of them will be on my 2021 favourites. I don't know, maybe. Sometimes books that I just thought were really good become my favourites over time. Like, for example, last year, The Old Drift by Namwali Sopel. I liked it when I first read it, but it was the book that stayed with me the most over the year and ended up being my favourite book. So potentially that will happen with some of these books. There will be books that resonate with me and I continue to think about. But as of now, no, none of them will be my new favourites, but I did enjoy them. Let me know in the comments what you think. If there's anyone who I didn't read a book from that you think I should try their taste, maybe I will make a series where I try other Booktubers' tastes. We will see. I know that that is something that other people do on this platform, so I will have a think about that. But thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I apologise that it's a little late, but I am not doing well with reading at the moment, like in terms of I'm just in a bit of a slump, so trying to work my way through that. If you did like this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos twice a week, so I will see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.